trade and contracts, and this panel is so incredibly exciting. I'm thrilled to be able to introduce Matt Flannery and talk about Kiva just a minute. I won't take too much of his time at all. I just wanted to say that I became aware of Kiva about 6 months ago whenever President Clinton was pushing it on his Clinton Global Initiative program. And it was one of those aha moments, like when you saw the website and you saw the idea and you saw the success in a matter of 2 years, you immediately said, this is a brilliant idea. This is unbelievably brilliant idea. And it's the kind of thing that couldn't probably have happened 10 years ago without the democratization of information and the ability of the internet to basically change the rules of the game in terms of the power brokers. We have a person who's in his, when he started it, was in his 20s and was told over and over and over by mainstream creditors, it can't be done, shouldn't be done, won't be done. And Matt and his wife Jessica basically said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to make this happen, and we're going to basically build on the momentum of the microfinance world, but take it a little bit step further, and not only create a network and community of borrowers, but also create a network and community of lenders, right? And so that's where we are now with Kiva. Kiva basically is an opportunity for every single one of us to develop a personal relationship with someone who needs $25 or $50 or $100 to open up their own business, and then you pay the money back to them, and then you can lend the money yet again. And if you don't think that $25 matters very much, well, it doesn't to you. $25 doesn't matter very much at all to you, but if you go to these other places and realize what it costs to start up a new business or to buy a goat or to do any other number of things that you might need to do to be able to start a new business, you realize the revolution that it has had. So that basically is what Kiva is. It's an opportunity for every single one of us to get involved. It's an opportunity for us to be involved by making $25 or $100 or $200 donations. It's also an opportunity for every single one of you to become an intern with Kiva and become a microfinance intern in 45 different countries in the world that Matt's going to talk about as well, and Pepperdine is going to try to push you to go and work with Kiva as a summer internship as well. So if you'll please warmly welcome Matt Flannery.
Hello. Thanks for coming, everybody. I hope we don't push you too hard to become interns. That sounds a little bit rough, but I hope you will think about it. We have a Kiva Fellowship program that's really helping us and helping our community out a lot, so I'll talk about that later. But thanks for having me. I'm not much of an experienced speaker. I'm actually a computer scientist by trade and a part-time attorney as well. That is unlicensed. So that's what I do a lot at Kiva, is some legal work and some fundraising work, and also a lot of computer programming. But anyway, I'm here to talk about what our business is going through, how it works, where we're at, and where we might go, and just discuss that with you. I would love to have a discussion more than a speaking event, more of a John McCain style, not a Barack Obama style. Get people to interject and have a town hall meeting. So if you have questions throughout, I'm not used to speaking uninterrupted. Most of the people I work with interrupt me a lot. So it gets kind of uncomfortable unless I get interrupted. So please do that. And so I'm just going to start off by with this screen. This is what our website looked like yesterday, meaning that it's usually a website that's full of people that are asking for loans, full of micro entrepreneurs and their profiles and stories about what they want to do with a small loan. But what you'll see is it's sold out. So why is that? Well, it's difficult to scale this business. It's difficult to continually grow infinitely, and things on the internet sometimes want to grow faster than things on the ground. And there's just a disconnect between the internet and the field reality. And that's why we're sold out. Our website's sold out today. I think if you tried to loan right now, you might not be able to. So we're actually turning away your money. People are coming trying to be philanthropists, and we're not allowing you to. Instead, we're asking you to donate to Kiva so that we can work in more countries with more people and fund more businesses. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about our story, how we started, in case you guys want to hear a story. Basically, Kiva started with a long commute between San Francisco and Africa. I was newly married as a computer scientist. I was working at TiVo, programming entertainment devices. I think one day I realized that I don't even watch TV. So I had no television. And so at TiVo, you have to declare sort of what you love on television. And on your business card, you have to say all the shows you love. And I had none. And I would go to work every day, and people would be talking about Sex and the City last night. And I'd be like, I didn't watch it, man. And it was a little bit, I don't know, I felt a little bit left out. So I went to Africa with my wife, Jess, for 3 months, just a short visit to volunteer, working with an NGO that gives small loans and grants to people to help start enterprises. And what we were doing there was sort of measuring poverty. So we were trying to apply poverty measurement tools to people that had received financing and people that hadn't received financing at different stages in their growth. And this is something that Alex Counts and the Green Foundation are famous for, which is applying metrics to poverty and poverty alleviation to measure the effectiveness of our efforts. So that was my first foray into that. And so what we would do is sort of interview somebody that started a goat herding business, and both before and after they scaled their business, and ask questions like trying to get at the level of poverty that they were experiencing. Did they have a mattress, which is a huge demarcation in East Africa to whether you are truly middle class. Having a mattress, that's something most people don't get the ability to have. Whether you actually put sugar in your tea is also a huge demarcator there. It's a measure of wealth. You can't just ask somebody, are you poor, or what's your net worth? Here in the USA, it's like, do you have a house, or are you renting? Or there's all these ways to figure out if someone's relatively wealthy. Over there, it's, do you put sugar in your tea? And so we were asking questions like that. And it was really inspiring because I had sort of an experience with international development work growing up, an impression of poor people as very pitiful in Africa, suffering, helpless, that need our help. And that was my impression. And when I was spending just a little time over there, I left more uplifted than I was before because people were optimistic, people were entrepreneurial, people were strategic, people were competitive, and people had good ideas, and they just needed access to financial services in order to pursue their dreams. And so that was quite inspiring to me, and it was like, aha, I think a lot of people have this moment in their life where, wow, this really works, and it's not a joke. And when you realize something really works and that you can actually affect someone's life with $25, it's pretty hard not to do that. So we went on a long journey of trying to start Kiva. We had the idea to simply sell people's loans over the internet. And we came back to San Francisco and talked to a lot of people and got a lot of advice about, how could you essentially put a goat herder's loan on the internet, sell it to people on the internet in San Francisco. At that point in time, it was just my friends, my family, people that I talked to. So how could you do that and structure that transaction? And I made a mistake, which I talked to a lot of lawyers. That when you're starting a business, I don't suggest first talking to lawyers. Never lead with legal. I think that the legal aspect maybe should come as infrastructure, but they're not necessarily at that point the best people to talk to, because it was quite discouraging because I realized how legally complex structuring a debt transaction between someone in San Francisco and someone in Uganda was. That's quite difficult. You can imagine, a lot of you study law, so you can imagine writing that promissory note between someone here and someone there. You can imagine who regulates that transaction. Does the U.S. government regulate a California to Uganda transaction, a two-way debt transaction? Does the Ugandan government regulate that? How is that regulated? So people told me that's illegal. You can't do that. That's illegal. And I had the impression that maybe one day, men in suits would show up at my door and shut it down if I actually started doing this. So I got kind of scared and slowed down. People also said that can't scale. So microfinance, we talk about scale, we talk about MFIs that have maybe thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even 1 million borrowers. And I was talking about, what if you took a picture of every person that received a loan and put it on the site from Uganda? one at a time. And that just sounds like a massive effort that won't scale. When you talk about growing MFIs rapidly, it doesn't sound like taking a picture and using a dial-up modem when the power's off half the time will work. So it got quite discouraging. I agreed, wow, that doesn't sound like it would scale. And then there's this sort of disconnect between sort of social enterprise and the weird space it's in. Kiva was wanting to be a social enterprise, meaning something that's not necessarily wildly profitable, but something that's sustainable. And a lot of people, it's hard to raise money for something like that. If you all try to start one of those, it's hard to know who to talk to. So you might talk to a charity, like a foundation, and they might say, you know, that's really a business. You should talk to for-profit. You should talk to venture capitalists. And you might talk to venture capitalists, and they say, oh, that's not profitable enough. I'm looking to get rich. I'm looking to make 10x income. And that's not really what I was offering. So I had difficult raising money. I had difficult convincing lawyers it was legal. And I had difficulty convincing practitioners that this idea could scale. And so we really slowed down because of all these naysayers. But at a certain point, we just decided to start. We started with 7 people in the same village where we were volunteering with in Africa. And we had my friend Moses, who was a pastor, lend to people in his congregation on our website, one by one, in Uganda. And so I didn't know if it could scale or not. I just said, let's try. This will be interesting. And we had another job at the time, so it wasn't really risky. I wasn't risking my personal fortune. Maybe I was risking the legality issue, but it didn't feel that scary. So essentially, we had 3 offices. Our first office was my workplace at the time, TiVo. So I would stay there after work and write a lot of code. And then I quit my job when I thought, this idea might work. And as I worked at the corner donut shop. I live in the Mission in San Francisco and spent many hours. It's open 24 hours. So that's why the donut shop was a great place. I wrote entire accounting system, transaction system, all the software to do Kiva at that donut shop. It's called Happy Donut. That's not actually the exact donut shop. I got that off the internet. It had Wi-Fi though, so that was good. And I got to know the staff really well. Lots of cops actually come into donut shops like that. So. You know, I was there at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., cops come in, it really happens, and guess what? They get the donuts, and then they leave. They don't pay. So you explain that one. San Francisco cops don't pay for donuts. Something I learned. I don't know what they're getting in return, what the donut shop gets in return for that. And then there's our office. So we finally have an office now, and we have 35 staff. So we're actually a real place now. What allowed us to get an office was we never received venture capital. What we received was a lot of press. I'm not putting up this here to say, wow, look at all the press we've gotten, but to say, sort of, wow, look at all the press we've gotten. It's really helped us grow. And it essentially was the subsidy we needed to build a business without an investor. We had no investors. So we built this business on the subsidy provided by Ms. Winfrey and Newsweek and all these press articles, which essentially injected capital into our business, maybe really fast, artificially, to help us grow a business that otherwise might not have been able to grow. So we've gotten a lot of press. It's been. Where was your first? Thank you. Oh. Who was the first opportunity in terms of getting press? The first one was these guys. These guys, Daily Kos. They're in Berkeley. They blogged about us one day when I was still working at TiVo, and it essentially crashed our server and put us through the roof. And it took this idea from sort of a nice idea that was maybe good for a donut shop. It took it from an idea like that to something that, this could actually scale because people really care about it. It's not just my cousins that are lending money on the site now. It's actually tens of thousands of people from this website that are thinking about it. So that really helped us create a business. It was a blog. You know, really what happened to us was blogs wrote about us much before any press, like mainstream press came along. So it was really a grassroots internet-led movement. Yeah, Jay?
A lot of law students and ASUs, they have great ideas, and a lot of them are internet-based. That's the age we're living in. And you get to this point where you create this idea, and then you're ready to start looking at implementing it, and you get to the technology point, and seems like maybe that was your advantage, is having the computer science background. Do you think this is something you could have started without that background, or when people come to you and they say they have ideas, and it's internet based, I mean, what do you advise?
Yeah, what I usually advise is say, find someone that cares about it a ton and that will make it happen without a lot of money. So find like a co-founder-like person that can program the computer and really cares about it themselves. I think starting a web-based business, it's best to start with someone that's really close to the product and cares about it, and they're actually making the product versus hiring a bunch of people that are far away. Maybe a lot of people might start a business and hire a bunch of programmers in India or China or Ukraine or something. And what you do is you create physical distance between the people making the product and the people that thought of the product. So whenever you can get, reduce the distance between people that care and people that make things, I think that's a good thing. Okay. So we got a lot of press. We were on the Daily Kos, and then we were on Frontline PBS, and we were on the Wall Street Journal and Oprah Winfrey. And for a lot of this time, we didn't have a business. So I actually didn't have a business entity, and the money was going through my personal checking account. So we were actually in the Wall Street Journal at a time with the Grameen Bank in an article with, the Wall Street Journal featured. There's often these articles, the title is usually like lending a hand or helping hand or something about lending a hand. And we were in this article with Opportunity International, the Grameen, I think it was Grameen Bank, and Kiva. And at the time, we were a two-person organization with no paid employees and no business entity, and the money was going through my personal checking account. So this whole experience for me was one of bootstrapping and catching up little by little and trying to get legitimacy maybe after the fact. And it was a pretty stressful period where things really picked up and grew fast. Okay, so that's the story. Most of you know about microfinance. I'm not teaching I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, but sometimes you have to sort of introduce the topic. Most of the world's poor own small businesses, work for small businesses. They have a few. They're entrepreneurial. They're informal. They work in the informal economy. They don't necessarily have business licenses or equity. They just are doing things, diversifying their income to support their family. And microfinance is the practice of providing poor people financial services. So banking services like credit, but also like insurance, deposits, savings. These are things which the Grameen Bank and the Grameen Foundation have pioneered. And what is one trend, one thing to note, in that there's much more demand for microloans than are provided worldwide. So there's a lot of room to grow. I'm not at all an expert in microfinance. In fact, when we started Kiva, I didn't know what microfinance was. So I had to learn as I go, but one obvious fact is there's a lot more room to grow, a lot of demand for small loans and small banking products to poor people all over the world. Did you have a question? Okay. What was the first question? Sorry. What kind of overhead? Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm saying an interesting thing. I'm showing this graph which illustrates that there's a lot of need in the world for banking services to poor people. But I'm also saying that Kiva doesn't have any room to take more of your money because our site is sold out of loans. It's an interesting question. Obviously, we're just one small player in a big industry. But Kiva's overhead consists of essentially 35 staff. So we have 35 paid employees. Just paying them is our operational budget. You might want to call that overhead. I don't know. That answer your question? And our lenders are lending money to poor people on the website at 0%. So one way we got around all the complexities, the legal complexities, was to take the interest rates off of our site, which we had them at first at the donut shop, then we took them off because we realized that the lawyers and the regulators might be very concerned if people were making a profit on our website. So we essentially stripped it off. And it seemed to be doing quite well at the 0% level. But let me just clarify that the entrepreneurs, the micro borrowers on the site, are paying an interest rate to the MFI that they work with. So we work with an MFI called Lapo in Nigeria, and the entrepreneurs there are paying maybe 20, 30%, I'm not exactly sure, to that Nigerian organization, which is working with Kiva and raising money on Kiva at 0%. So the organization in the middle is keeping an interest rate to support their operations. Yeah. Yeah, so basically, this is thank you. I should have paid you for that. This is one way the money flows. Let's talk about how the money flows on our website. We have internet lenders like this interesting, smart person over here, and that lends money to this interesting, smart person over here who's a seamstress in Ecuador. So we have the money goes from Pepperdine to Ecuador. How does it get there? It goes essentially through online payment systems to our bank account. So someone will, the seamstress will be here. She will lend money to the seamstress. We'll get it in our bank account over the internet, and we will disperse it to the MFI, the microfinance institution that's in the middle there, that's managing the loan to the actual seamstress. Because the seamstress doesn't use the internet. She might not know what the computer is, and she doesn't have a bank account. Yeah. Really lucrative speaking engagements. No. The way we make money is the internet lenders will lend money at 0%, right? They'll lend money at 0% through the system and get it back. So she'll lend $100 and get back $100. But we also ask the internet lender to pay the rent. So we ask a question, will you help us pay the rent? It's a really ingenious question. And the internet lender usually says yes. And so what she'll do is on top of her $100 loan, she'll pay us $10. And so for every transaction, we might get $10. It's very consistent. 8 out of 10 people pay like 10%. So it ends up we get, this year we're going to lend $40 million through our website. And we're getting 8% in revenue. So we're getting $3, $4 million just by paying the rent. Our rent is not that expensive. So we actually had to change the question. We now have a variety of other questions. Help us expand our reach. Help us reach more people, because paying the rent was sort of intellectually dishonest after a while. But we are almost breaking even on those fees. We're nearly break even, but not. We have grants as well. Yeah. It's a good question. How do we find the MFIs, like that one, Adelante? How do we find them? At first, we found them by us being in Uganda, right? And we actually created one with a pastor in a church. That was version 1.0, and it worked okay, but when you start doing lots of money, it didn't work, didn't scale. Church isn't that big. So I had to work with more NGOs. So we started to try to find NGOs all over the world by emailing them through the internet by using the Mixed Market. Mixed Market's a website full of MFI data. So we did that, and we got maybe 8 or 9 partners that way. And then that didn't work all that well either, because we weren't doing enough due diligence. We weren't visiting. We weren't creating professional relationships with MFIs. We weren't structuring the deals in a really responsible way. So those are all sort of version 1.0, version 2.0 in 2005. Now what we do is we actually visit. We travel around the world. We have 35 staff, 12 of which do a ton of traveling. They actually visit, do due diligence and vetting all over the world in, I think, 4 continents. So it's quite thorough now. Yes, sir. How do we regulate and ensure how much? Well, what we do is we ask the MFI to post up the loan amount of the seamstress here and post it accurately in local currency. So the MFI will post in Ugandan shillings the exact amount that the person will get, and then it gets translated to dollars and put on our website. And then we send that money to the MFI. Now, one question is, how do we know it actually got to that entrepreneur, right? We've had situations where it didn't, and it was really heartbreaking. We got to the place and found out some of the money was stolen. That was terrible. That was version 1.0. And so what we did was we introduced an auditing program. So now we work with Ernst & Young, who audits the partners, the MFIs all over the world, and does random spot checks and asks the question, did the money get to this person? And if we ever found out that it doesn't, we sort of report that on the website, and it hurts the reputation of the MFI on our website. No, they're not. Not at all. It's very expensive. We're bringing it in-house. So we actually now have employees in Africa, South America, all over the world that are actually taking over that monitoring and what we call borrower verification process. And they're actually Kiva employees now. Yes? Well, MFIs work with borrowers all over the world, and they each have their own methodologies for choosing who they lend to. And Kiva is just a website, and we don't really dictate that. But oftentimes, as Muhammad Yunus pioneered, they group the borrowers into groups. So oftentimes borrowers self-select themselves into groups of women that apply for a loan together and mutually assure the payback together. They sort of vouch for each other. That's one way. But microfinance institutions, what they usually do is they start off small by lending $60 to a woman. And then if she pays back that amount, they'll offer a larger loan. And the promise of a future loan is incentive to pay back this current loan. Does that make sense? Yes? It's an excellent question. A lot of people, borrowers, are unprotected in their government, by their government or in their local environment. And I wish I wish our organization could do something to protect them, but we don't. We can't. And so we just, we work heavily in Kenya, and our roots go back to working in Kenya. And what just happened was there was an election crisis and lots of rioting in Kenya. And we worked with about 4 partners, and maybe 3 of them were severely impacted, meaning the borrowers of those MFIs fled. So if you're lending money to somebody that's in a slum in Nairobi, and there's civil unrest in Nairobi, the borrowers went back to their home villages, their tribal origins, essentially throughout the country, and obviously they're not making money, and obviously they're not paying back the loans. So what we had in our business was a mass default of Kenya this year. And we couldn't do anything to stop it. We just showed transparently what was happening on the site. Okay, let's see what we have in store. Yeah. When there are defaults on our website, they are unsecured, uncovered defaults. So you as a lender won't get the money back. It's an unguaranteed loan. Right now we have about a 97% historical repayment rate. Well, our lawyers have advised me not to give tax advice. So I don't know what you would do with that, but what I would do was not count it as a charitable donation because the intention was a loan. So we do not issue you a receipt for that. If you tried to make a loan and then lost it, we do not issue a tax deduction for that. But you have to work that out with your own audit and CPA. Okay, so our site's all about community too. We're not just about the community borrowers, but the community of lenders. We have 300,000 lenders, 350,000 lenders. We have a lot of social networking. We're a burgeoning social networking site, and we're growing fast in terms of the socializing and connection. So we have lots of lenders. This guy, most of our lenders are sort of, 80% of them are in the USA. Most of them are higher income, like they make $80,000 household income. Most of them are Caucasian, to be honest, which is interesting. But we also have lenders in about 100 countries. So we have lenders in Mexico, we have lenders in Malaysia, lending to people in Mexico and in local countries. So we're out seeing local to local lending as well. So this is a typical lender. They have a profile, kind of like Facebook. They tell the world why they loan money, and they're proud of that. And they have a portfolio. So they have, it's like collecting sort of baseball cards. They collect these loans, and they have their own portfolio. I was big into sort of sports, fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, and I wanted to create something addictive about being philanthropic. And so I've been trying to mimic a lot of addictive websites and apply that addictive energy to doing good in the world. And that's really big about my product philosophy for Kiva. We have foundations lending money. So we have family foundations lending philanthropic money, hundreds of thousands. We have some foundations that have lent $500,000 on our website into these small businesses. We also have colleges. So we have a great university called Westmont College in Santa Barbara that has a lending team, 9 people on the team, and they're lending as a team. So I checked this morning before I got here whether Pepperdine had one, and you don't. So in order for me to make my trip worthwhile, we have to create one. So we could create one right after this. And then, sir, you can compete against Westmont. I thought maybe Westmont was a rival, but I guess it's not because there's no booing right now. Does Pepperdine have a rival? Gonzaga? I could have put UCLA because they have a team. But I guess Gonzaga, they don't have a team. They would be good, though. They're good. The Zags. Okay. So, just saying where we work, we have about 100 partners now, 100 microfinance institution partners in almost 45 countries. So what we did was we had to grow really fast because the mounting money was coming into our site. And so one way we sort of diversified risk was to send smaller amounts to more places. And so we created this sort of a situation with lots of variety. So you can lend to somebody in Cambodia, get paid back and put that money and send it to someone in Bulgaria. And we're working with MFIs all over the world now. And it's pretty interesting. We have staff dedicated to each region that travel, and then we have local staff in those regions. Kiva is a Swahili word, which means agreement. And so I thought of that when I was working, trying to create the brand when I was working my other job at TiVo, created this company called Kiva. And it was in the Swahili dictionary, and it was free on register.com. But then I went back to Kenya, where people speak Swahili, and no one had heard of the word. So people don't use this word, it's only in the dictionary. But it has a good meaning, and it turned out to be a good brand name. And there's actually no authoritative dictionary for Swahili. So there's various online dictionaries, but they disagree, and it's hard to say if this word really exists. I've never met a Swahili speaker that knows it. Never. Okay. So that's it. See you guys. That's not it. I don't know if you thought it was serious or not. Do you want it to be over? That was a good way. Okay. Well, what I'm going to introduce is maybe a fairly esoteric concept to you guys, which we created this idea of the long tail MFIs, or we use that term maybe for the first time. But what we mean is microfinance is a fairly diverse industry, obviously worldwide. There are thousands of microfinance institutions worldwide, maybe a church group in Ghana to sort of a pretty large-scaled bank that went IPO in Mexico. And there's everything in between. There's big ones and small ones. But there's also a lot of people that want to put their money into the microfinance industry, right? And what they're doing is concentrating their dollars in the big ones. There's about 250 or so MFIs that are really worthy of taking commercial capital. So a hedge fund could invest in them, or a mutual fund could invest in them, a really commercial instrument. But there are thousands, so many more that are not invested in by commercial capital. And so Kiva's found out that we're not that good at working with really big institutions. They don't really need our website. They don't really need our money. but we're really good at working with small ones that are looking to grow. And so what we've done is we sign up 100 pretty small and medium-sized MFIs, and some of them are growing quite rapidly in part because of working with us. And so the internet is a great place to spread risk. We're using the internet to get small amounts of money from lots of people and send smaller amounts of money to lots of people, therefore diversifying risk and reducing risk for any one player in the system. And we use time to monitor the success or failure of the people and the partners on our website, and some of them rise to the top and some of them collapse. And so what we've seen is, some small MFI right here, when they started working with us 2 years ago, all of a sudden is pretty big now. And that's really cool. And we've also seen some MFIs totally collapse in the period of time that they work with us. And that's not so good, but our system can handle it because it's fault tolerant, it's risk tolerant, and the internet is really good at spreading out risk. That's something that is unique. The lenders on our website don't really want their money back. That's an interesting thing. They want information, they want feedback, and they want to know the impact that they're having, but they don't necessarily, they're not dying to get their money back. In fact, when they get paid, they relend. So everyone that gets paid from a loan, they usually put it back into another loan. When you loan money, it's usually a 12-month loan. So you loan money, and 12 months later, you get it back. In the meantime, you're getting small repayments. So $100 over 10 months, you'll get 10 payments of $10. Or you might not, because they might not pay you back. Okay. Just going to show you some borrowers just to see the variety of borrowers on our site. This is a woman in Kenya that likes to buy a hybrid goat with the money. She wants to buy a hybrid goat, and she got funded on our site, and she did that. I don't know what a hybrid goat is. It's like, I think it's a really efficient goat. But anyway, this woman got $75 on our site to buy a hybrid goat, and she did quite well. I've actually met her outside of Kenya, outside of Nairobi. This is a woman in Samoa, so we actually work in Samoa. On Kiva, we funded 1% of the population of the country of Samoa on our website. In 3 years, we've hit 1%. That is a crazy statistic. We actually have an employee that works there full-time now, helping manage our partner there, who's gotten quite big. And I believe they also work with Grameen, maybe? I don't know. But this is a woman there. This is a butcher in Afghanistan that works with Mercy Corps NGO over in Kabul. And so our lenders, they like the variety. They don't mind sending their money to Christian countries, Muslim countries, war-torn countries, peaceful countries. This guy's a little less popular on our website than a woman because he's a man. Women are usually they're funded faster than men for some reason. Also, agricultural businesses are funded faster than meat businesses. So our lenders sometimes don't prefer to send money to butchers as much as agriculture. This guy's a taxi driver in Bulgaria, and he just got quashed. But we didn't require them to be primarily women, but we just allow our MFI partners to post up whoever they want. And it turns out that 75% of them are women. Yeah, so they're quite sexist. And based in San Francisco, we don't visit the woman personally. Well, actually, we sometimes do. But what we check for is, did the money get to her? And is the data on the website real? But we don't check, did she use it to buy a hybrid goat? And many MFIs do that. And I'd love for Alex to expand on this, what percentage of the MFIs he's seen actually hold the borrowers accountable to use the money for a specific purpose. Is that?
Well, and I actually also had a question, but I would just say the typical case is where sometimes it makes a lot of sense for a woman to change her business, right? Market conditions change. Most of these businesses are built are chosen by the poor so that if market conditions change, they can shift their capital into something else. And the general rule is that if a woman wants to change her business, redeploy her capital from goats to chickens, from goats to a general store she wants to start, as long as she does that in consultation with the other women in her group and with the MFI, if that's what the custom is for that MFI, that's fine. In fact, it's a good idea. Why keep your money in a business that's suddenly not profitable? So that's now being able to be it creates problems for Kiva, but it's actually the right way, I think, to run an MFI. Just as the way a person borrowing from a bank here, if their business wasn't profitable, they want to shift into that. As long as they do it with proper consultation, they should should change their business strategy. But I had a question, question is kind of why not have Kiva, it kind of almost gets to this issue, lend to profile the microfinance organizations as the key recipient, because that's actually who you're lending to. You're not lending to the people directly. And it would be an opportunity to educate people about the microfinance process, and in a different way. You do profile them, but it's second. And to say, well, why do that? Well, I could see a lot of reasons why not. But one issue is I wonder how you've tackled with some of the privacy issues. Are all these women, now and in the past, were they aware that they were going to be, their stories were going to be, and what it means to have their stories broadcast all across the world that the other women in their group might not be? And do they realize that if they default on their loan, that they defaulted will be known to potentially millions of people? Do they agree to that? And do they agree to it knowing really the implications of that, and how that could, because that information will be public within their country, public to anyone who wants it. And of course, if you were to be leading with the message of lending to the organization, you get around that. Anyway, how do you deal with those issues?
Thanks a lot for the question. I'll take the last one first. It's about borrower privacy. It's something that we weren't very good at first. We gave cameras to our partners and let them post up the borrowers. What we found out is that not all of them knew they were on our website. And we felt we have an obligation to make sure they know, and they have the right to refuse that. So now what we do is we give them a waiver, and we require that every borrower on our site personally gives permission to have their picture on the website. And so we have different levels of privacy. One is just the default is that their name and their town and their picture is identified. Another one is that their location is obscured and their last name is obscured. And obviously the other is that they just don't get on the website at all. So we're doing better at that, but it's something that took us a while to catch up to. Sort of borrower privacy issues. Anecdotally, we send fellows all around the world. We sent 200 volunteers to visit the MFIs and visit the borrowers. And often what they do is they print out a piece of paper and show the borrowers, here's the 20 Americans, or here's the 20 people that provided your loan. And most of the time, the vast majority of borrowers that we've interacted with love that idea, and they really appreciate. And it's inspiring to know that there's 20 people all over the world that gave them $25 each. It's actually adding value to the process. But in some cases, it's not. So, for instance, in some Muslim countries, there's some gender issues. Women in photographs has been a problem. So husbands finding that out. There's some cultural issues there. So we've tried to sort of catch up and make sure that it's culturally appropriate and that the borrowers have the right to refuse that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
A lot of our students are contract students, and who has an agreement with whom in terms of these different relationships? I think it's very interesting.
I think
They don't, but I do.
Alex asked two questions, though. The first one was why not just have the MFIs on the site as the primary borrower rather than, why do we require the picture? I would love for someone to try that, just getting loans to MFIs at 0% interest rate. My gut is that it wouldn't be very popular and it wouldn't attract much excitement on the internet. We think of ourselves as sort of like a gateway experience to international development and microfinance. And we found that 40% of our users had never made a donation internationally before. And about 45-50% had never heard of microfinance before they heard about our website. So nearly half of our users learned about microfinance through our website. And so how do you get that audience in? How do you get people that would have never cared about it in? You get them by providing them a sense of transparency, personal connection. So that's pretty big in terms of my product philosophy. Is to draw them in and then teach them along the way about the MFI. And they're learning about the partners. We're doing social ratings of our partners next year, exposing more of the practices of our partners. So we hope to teach them. Okay, your question, contracts. So for the first 3 years of Kiva, I did all the legal work. Well, I coordinated it all. And we basically created a contract between Kiva and the MFI. So essentially, Kiva asked the MFIs to faithfully post pictures on the website, to not inflate the loan amounts, to post accurate data. So that's what a partner is supposed to do at Kiva. They're supposed to post accurate repayment data and accurate payment data, disbursement data. And that's their obligation. They're supposed to return the money to us if it's reported on our site. So we have this sort of narrative agreement between Kiva, the organization, and the 100 partners we work with. We don't have contracts directly with the borrowers on the site, and we don't really have a contract with the lender except for the terms of use of the website. How do we determine if someone like a borrower is too profitable or one of the MFIs? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the short answer is we don't. We hope that the poor people on our site are very profitable, and that would be great. And we don't try to stop them from being very, very profitable. No. There might be issues with MFIs that become very profitable and market obsessed, or sort of maximizing their own profits. And we don't desire to work with MFIs that are doing predatory lending practices or losing their social focus. So we do screen for the social focus of our partners at a base level, making, we don't desire to work with partners that are going IPO or maximizing their profits. We're not against that, but that's not the right kind of partner for our website. What's that? IPO, like, there was an MFI in Mexico that went IPO. That means they sold their shares to the public. Like, they went public, essentially. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think at a point where an MFI did that, we wouldn't be working with them anymore because they have, access to lots of capital at that point. We have gifting and regifting. So we have gifting all over the place. Gift certificates are big for us. So every Christmas we sell, last Christmas we sold $3 million in gift certificates. These $25 at a time, a family member giving their other family member gifts. So it's a really key idea. If you run any philanthropic website, you should be doing that. Heifer is the pioneer. I think they do $20 million a year in gifts, primarily through their catalog. And so we're catching up to that, and it's an obviously good thing to do if you're a business like us. We seek our borrowers by seeking out MFIs that work with a network of borrowers already. So rather than just, we don't have enough people to go across the world and find all the poor people ourselves, so we have to find the NGO or the MFI in the middle there that reaches out to their own community. And sometimes they do that by advertising in a village, walking out, spreading the word that there's a fair loan to be had here. There's marketing. Sometimes MFIs, microfinance institutions, compete for borrowers in their area. On your first point with governments, certain governments prevent us from working in that country. So China is an example of that. Kiva cannot work in China. Obviously, there's a lot of poor people that could use loans there, but we can't work there because the government prevents that international investor to come in. That's kind of what we are, an international lender. And so they restrict their currency. They protect their own currency that way. And same with India, particularly prevents us from working there, and Brazil and other countries. Usually emerging market countries like this are a little protective of international investors like Kiva. We need the lawyers to figure that out. Are you guys interested in the metrics of our business? These graphs, these are really great graphs. They represent, this is what we call our dashboard. We show this every month to our staff. This is about 2 months old. but essentially the top one is loan volume per month. So now we're doing about 5 million in loans a month. So it really spiked from 708 till 908. It's up to 5. But that line's going up, and there's a disparity between postings and funding. So sometimes there's more people borrowing money than lending. Sometimes there's more people lending than borrowing. Today we have much more lending than borrowing, but it changes. So you see there was in February, March, there was actually more posting than lending. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely due to Kenya. Yeah, that 100% because of problems of working in Kenya, that jump.
Do you see globally the food crisis as another potential driver of default outside of Kenya?
We've seen that anecdotally, but we haven't been hit. Our website hasn't been hit with a mass default because of a global food crisis yet. But especially in Southeast Asia, we have a lot of stories about the price of rice and the difficulty with people buying and selling food because of that. But the MFIs we work with have been able to pay us back. One issue is, and I know this is something that's close to your heart, which is currency risk, which is a growing problem with Kiva that we're trying to solve. So in addition to global food prices, we have currency fluctuation issues, whereas George Bush is going to be out of office soon, and our economy might improve, and the U.S. dollar might spike and might gain in value relating to sort of other currencies all over the world. But our MFIs owe us U.S. dollars, and that's an issue. That's a growing risk that could affect our website if all of the MFIs have to pay us back in U.S. dollars, and the U.S. dollar has grown in value by 30% in a year. That could really hurt our community. So we're trying to solve that by doing local currency lending. But that's, as you know, a very complicated thing to do.
So right now, if that were the case, who bears that 30%? Where does that land?
Right now, our partners are bearing the currency risk, which is a problem that we were too naive to solve in the very early days. So we would ask them for the full U.S. dollar amount. Now, if they weren't able to pay, they are not able to pay. We're not interested in suing them and putting them out of business. So it's an issue, but it's oftentimes there's a little bit, this is my personal thing, there's a little bit too much alarmism in the microfinance community about this issue, because most of these international hard currency lenders wouldn't sue or simply put an MFI out of business because they couldn't pay back if there was a currency crisis. That's my anecdotal evidence working with other lenders that I know, is that yes, it's an issue because the partners owe us hard currency, but if there was a massive crisis, what's the real implication of that? Is the European MFI fund going to put an MFI out of business and sue them into the ground in Kenya? I haven't seen it happen. Other than the US dollar? Yeah. I would love to. Well, the foreign exchange risk is a combination of the exotic local currencies and the hard currency. So even if you worked with the Swiss franc, actually a stronger hard currency would be more oppressive because it would make it more likely that the Ugandan shilling would depreciate relative to that. So it's actually more advantageous for partners to work with a weak currency lender like the US dollar in the last year. But it's an interesting issue. One idea we had once was to create our own currency, so Kiva dollars or something, which is this common. It's not pinned to the U.S. dollar. It's pinned to sort of a blend of other currencies, like the blend of all the currencies that we work with. Sort of this chablis of money, but that's pretty complicated as well. So I think what we're doing is we're going to have 45 currencies on our site, and you lend it. Obviously, you pay in dollars, but once you pay in dollars, the reports are reported to you in the local currency amount, and you actually, at the end of the day, get back another translated amount by the end. It's really complicated, especially when you're working in so many countries. This is borrower verification. So like I said, we visit our partners now. So at the beginning, we had visited very few partners and done audits at only 15 about a year and a half ago. And we've been slowly auditing them with Ernst & Young and our own staff. And now we've audited about 40. So we work with, almost 100 partners, and we've audited 40. So we're getting better every month, but it's a slow climb. Call that retroactive due diligence. 40 total. Sorry, that's a cumulative. That's a little misleading, I agree. It's a cumulative number. This top right thing is our own finances. So OSS refers to our own operational self-sufficiency. Kiva has revenue. And with that revenue, today, we're about 60, 70% break even. And the rest is filled in with the donors, like grantors like the Rockefeller Foundation or the Kellogg Foundation. At times we've been profitable. There was a brief period where we were, over 100%, and then we hired a lot of people, and we went back into the unprofitable range. But that's what you have to do to grow, So I'm just saying, imagine what could happen if Kiva was successful. Here are some ideas we could have. We could have borrowers becoming lenders. So what we could really create is the world's largest electronic bank for the poor. Maybe the next big bank for poor people is electronic. Maybe one day, borrowers can be lending directly through the website if technology catches up. And they could be depositing on the website, and they could be borrowing from the website if the technology catches up and the risk catches up. That's sort of a pipe dream for me, is to provide a direct lender experience, direct borrower and lender experience to poor people all over the world. You might be able to do that using mobile phones. So what we're seeing is we're experimenting using mobile phones in East Africa. You could actually lend money to someone's phone, and they could actually get cash through their phone. We want to provide researchers with a data source. We're collecting, tens of thousands, maybe one day millions of business stories and repayment information. So what if that data could be used as an educational source? People could search it. What if we built online accounting software, MIS systems, MIS software, I guess, for partners to use online? What if accounting at an MFI was done through the web, hosted in San Francisco? What if we created FICO scores for entrepreneurs, and they use their Kiva score to prove their identity, to prove their credit rating, and a woman that fled Nairobi because of the riots could get a loan in Tanzania because of her credit score on the internet? This is a person that might not have an ID card, but what if she can have a reputation on the internet for the first time? That's another what if.
What's stopping
That? Not enough fine-grained data about the borrowers and their actual repayment history. It's really new. A lot of the data is unreliable in terms of repayments, meaning that MFIs are covering sort of the lack of, if a woman doesn't pay on time, the MFI just covers it. So it's not really as person-to-person like as I personally desire. So these are a bunch of ideas. They're very far off. It's not what we're doing today, but sort of start thinking about all the opportunities. Yeah. I'm sorry, I missed the first part. Yeah, we don't have a program like that. We've struggled to facilitate trips like that. It's a whole different business that we don't know how to, this travel agency or donor trips, we haven't been able to pull it off. But what's happened is so many people have done it without us. So I've had all these serendipitous experiences where someone from Seattle goes to Ecuador and visits the seamstress that she lent to, and then they send us a picture and they blog about it without us even knowing about it. And that's sometimes, it scares me a little bit, as you mentioned, the privacy issues, but it just happens, and you can't really stop people from traveling. So it's happening all over the world, and it's interesting, and it's only been positive thus far. Haven't had any stalkers yet.
Let me just wind up by just having you appreciate what we're talking about here. This is a situation that could not have happened 10 years ago. This is a person, a couple, Matt and his wife Jessica, in their 20s, working out of a donut shop, and in 2 years, they have raised $40 million. I mean, this is an amazing, amazing thing that we're seeing, and this is just the very beginning. This really is the beginning. I mean, you're going to hear about Kiva for years and years and years ahead, and just like you're beginning to really be inundated with information about Grameen Bank, you know, we're going to be in the future where microfinancing is going to change our children's lives, because everyone's going to have a partner that they loan to. My son will have a $10 lender that he's lending money to. So I think this is just an absolutely amazing experience that we're talking about, and I wanted to encourage you to think about this as an entrepreneurial school, about how you can participate in these sorts of things, how you can tap into this sort of energy. Pepperdine is extremely excited about Grameen and about Kiva, and if you're interested in working in, you know, one of the 45 different countries that Kiva works in, and you want to go over there and you want to work with their partner MFIs and such, you know, let us know, let Jay know, let Melanie know, let me know, and we'll try to find a way to get funding to make that happen. If you want to start a Kiva club at Pepperdine and start raising money, let us know. We want to work with you and try to make that happen. This is an amazing, amazing organization. So please thank Matt Flannery.